Welcome back to Hearing Conservation. In this recording, we'll briefly discuss anatomy and physiology of the human ear. By the completion of this recording, you will be able to explain in simple terms the major parts of the ear and their function. In order to do so, we will discuss in this recording in great detail the anatomy of the ear, including the outer, middle, and inner portions, in order for you to explain in simple terms the major parts of the ear and their function. So to begin, we're going to have a review of some anatomical terms. So anatomy refers to structure and physiology refers to function. We also refer to the body in terms of different planes. So we can refer to the body in terms of the sagittal plane. And when we do that, we're referring to the body in terms of the left and right halves. And when we use the term mid-sagittal, we're referring to the midline. Additional anatomical terms include medial, which means toward the midline, lateral, away from the midline, proximal, close to something, or distal, far away. Dextral refers to the right, and sinistral refers to the left. We can also divide the body in terms of in its transverse plane, which divides the body from divides the top from the bottom. We can also refer to the body in terms of superior locations and inferior locations, or rostral, meaning toward the head, and caudal, meaning toward the tail. Superior toward the top and inferior toward the bottom. Additional terms include when we talk about dividing the body on the coronal plane, which divides the body from front to back. And when we do that, we have anterior, which refers to the front, or ventral, which means toward the sternum. And then we also have posterior, which means toward the back, or dorsal, meaning toward the spine. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, anatomy and physiology of the human ear. So the ear is divided into three parts to the peripheral auditory system. We have the outer ear, which includes the pinna, the external auditory canal. The middle ear, which includes the middle ear ossicles, malleus, incus, and the stapes. And we have the inner ear, which includes the cochlea and the vestibulocochlear nerve and semicircular canals in the vestibule. Okay, so the outer ear is responsible for collecting sound and funneling it to the tympanic membrane. The middle ear transmits vibrations from the tympanic membrane to the inner ear via the three tiny bones called the ossicles, which are the malleus, incus, and the stapes. And the inner ear translates mechanical vibrations to neural signals. Okay, so we're going to go into the more detail on the outer ear. So the middle and inner ears are located deep in the head. The temporal bone surrounds the ear canal, middle ear, and inner ear. Okay. The temporal bone is made up of 8 cranial bones that make up the skull. It connects to the occipital bone, the parietal bone, the sphenoid bone, zygomatic bone, and the mandible. Okay. There are 4 distinct portions of the temporal bone. There's the squamous portion, which is thin and fan-like, which lies anterior and superior to the external auditory canal. There's also the mastoid, or the bulge behind the ear, and this lies posterior to the external auditory canal, and it contains air cells. And we also have the tympanic, portion of the temporal bone, which forms the floor and part of the anterior and posterior walls of the external auditory canal. There's also the petrous portion, which projects medially from the other three parts. This is only visible in the medial view, and it contains sensory organs of hearing and balance and the internal auditory canal. Other major structures of the temporal bone include the zygomatic process, which projects from the squamous portion of the temporal bone and connects to the zygomatic bone. We also have the styloid process, which supports attachments of ligaments and musculature of the speech mechanism. Okay, so here is a figure that's showing us the different sections of the temporal bone. We've got the squamous portion, which we described as thin and fan-like, and it lies anterior and superior to the external auditory canal. We've got the mastoid here, which is the bulge behind the ear, which lies posterior to the external auditory canal. The tympanic portion, which forms the floor and part of the anterior and posterior walls of the external auditory canal. Here we have a medial aspect of the temporal bone. Here you can see the squamous portion again, the thin fan-like structure portion that lies anterior and superior to the external auditory canal. Here you have a better view of the petrous portion, which projects medially from the other three parts and is only visible in the medial view. Here, the sensory organs of hearing and balance are housed, as well as the internal auditory canal. Okay. Again, we've got the mastoid here, which is the thin bulge behind, the bulge behind the ear that lies posterior to the external auditory canal. We've got the styloid process, which supports attachments of ligaments and musculature of the speech mechanism. All right. So with the outer ear, we've got two primary components. There's the auricle, also known as the pinna, and then there's the external auditory canal. So the auricle or the pinna is built on a framework of cartilage. It consists of irregular surfaces that alter the spectral characteristics of sounds differently depending on the location of the sound source. So there's the helix, the scaphoid fossa, which is this undersurface here. There's the auricular tubercle, the antihelix. I'm sure as a lot of you are familiar with the tragus, this is a popular piercing place. The lobule, the antitragus, the intratragic notch, the external auditory meatus. Okay, these are just a couple of the figures or the structures that we're talking about when we refer to the pinna or the auricle. The external auditory canal is a tube that ends at the tympanic membrane. The lateral portion is lateral 1/3 portion is cartilage, and the medial 2/3 is bone, primarily from the squamous and tympanic parts of the temporal bone. The external auditory canal is about 3 centimeters long and 0.8 centimeters in diameter. It's curved in shape, so it's often difficult to visualize without pulling the pinna up and back to straighten out the ear canal. Okay. The ear canal, external auditory canal, is lined with tight-fitting skin. This cartilaginous portion has ceruminous glands, sebaceous glands. It may have hairs, oils that lubricate the external auditory canal, and cerumen, which repels insects.